Hello, everyone. Peymon will be enjoying summer break with his family over the next 3 weeks. In the meantime, we have planned 3 great and informative videos for you to watch. This week, we will show the topic he did at the Restore Freedom Rally on cashless societies. This presentation goes into the truth about the banking system and who controls it. In the following weeks, we will be showing Slave Nation. This informative documentary was co-produced by Freedom Law School. It dives deep into the realities surrounding the IRS and federal income taxes. Enjoy this educational content, and we look forward to returning back to our normal live broadcast after he and his family return from their trip in a few weeks.
There's a remote control here, guys. The remote, I don't think it's here. Is it? Yeah, we're missing a remote control, guys. Well, you guys get it. Well, thank you, guys. I'm going to talk about the issue of cashless society. You know, many people are concerned, and rightfully so, that they're pushing us to a cashless society where all of your purchases and sales, financial transactions, have to go through the banking or government system where, where they can see everything you're doing, because there's no more privacy, no more cash. You cannot buy anything anonymously. You want to buy lemonade from a kid? Gotta be online. You know, if you bought lemonade or magazine or gun, whatever you bought, they know about it. Well, I'm going to show you how we can prevent it, because it's already partially here. But your right to financial privacy, without that, what kind of privacy you got? They know about every single move. Who's your friends? Who you're buying from? They can ask that person, what did he do? They know all your relationships, right? Is this the way it's supposed to be? No. And it wasn't this way. Way back then, from times of the American Revolution, this was an example of money. Money is just a means of exchange of labor and talents and gifts, right? I provide this service, you provide that product. We need some common thing for us to be able to barter more conveniently, basically. So that's a $20 gold coin that you see. That's right, $20 was an ounce of gold, which is right now close to $2,000. These dollars are Federal Reserve notes that they call. So what happened, folks, is people used to just exchange this, and you bought whatever you bought. Nobody knew about your business at all. It was completely private. You had all those rights. This is a $1. Yeah, 1 ounce of silver. Now, until 1963, you know, that was well recognized. That's an ounce of silver. It's $1. Technically, that's a dollar amount, but by law, that is still $1. That's why on it says in the bottom about $1, because they know the Federal Reserve notes that's supposedly same as it are not really worth the same. And that right now goes for about maybe $25 or so right now in Federal Reserve notes equivalent. And you see, this isn't something, the truth was always there, but we don't look for it. All the paper money that they started in the 1900s, or even before, late 1800s, they would have this kind of language. These are all from Federal Reserve notes. The Federal Reserve is a central banking cartel of the United States, has 12 branches across America to make it look like it's decentralized. They call it federal to make it look like it's part of the federal government, but it's actually privately owned. The head of the beast is in New York City. Okay, the big banks own it. Okay, J.P. Morgan, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, all those criminal crooks, gangsters, they own it. So you see that on the paper money, it was just a receipt for the actual gold or silver. Look at the first one on the top. It says redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury or in gold or lawful money. Silver is lawful money too. At any Federal Reserve Bank. This was 1928. Here's another one. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. Legal tender means you offer that as a payment for your debt, and the other side must accept it. If they reject it, you paid them. That's right. I paid, a friend of mine pay his, was leaving the apartment complex, so try it out. Pay his rent in cash, and they would refuse to take the cash, the apartment complex. So, and he paid him. The lawyer wrote a letter back for him. No, you have to take. You rejected it. You were paid, and they backed off. The same with the cell phone company. Okay, so I'll be showing you guys down the road. One of my projects is pay Chase without paying Chase by offering him in cash, someone besides yourself, and then you paid. We'll talk about another presentation next year. It's a project coming. Yes, we can do that actually. So the second one says legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable to redeem. You can get back in lawful money, silver, at the United States Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank. See, they're trying to make the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury look like the same thing, but they're not. One is government, U.S. Treasury. Federal Reserve is privately owned cartel, no different than OPEC. Okay? The oil cartel. Now the new ones say this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. No language of being redeemable in anything. Because a note is just a receipt for the real thing. What is the real thing that we redeem it? Silver, gold, real something of value that people have recognized for thousands of years as having value. So you see that all the money that existed at the time, this is a 1928 Federal Reserve note. You see the language of redeemable in gold on demand, right? Here is the $1 1914 Federal Reserve note from Bank of New York, okay? Here is 1929 $50 banknote from Dakota National Bank of Yankton, South Dakota. By the way, this is not a Federal Reserve note. This is not issued by Federal Reserve. A bank in 1929 issued a piece of paper as redeemable, okay, for on demand, $50. On the left side, okay, you see that on the writing on the left side, below Yankton, South Dakota, it says, we'll pay to the bearer on demand $50. Okay. On the right also says, in the small writing, on the red seal, redeemable in lawful money of the United States, at the United States Treasury or at the bank of issue. Even after Federal Reserve was created in 1913, still banks issued notes, receipt for the actual money, gold or silver. Here's a 1914 banknote from the Ottawa County National Bank of Miami in Florida. Here it is in the center. The Ottawa County National Bank of Miami will pay to the bearer on demand $10. Okay. Here's a 1914 $5 banknote from the First National Bank of Detroit, right in the center. The bank issued it. First National Bank in Detroit will pay to the bearer on demand $5. Here's a 1917 $10,000 gold certificate from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. See, large transactions were easily done in gold or a note for it. Okay, you look at the bottom of that, they typed it in smaller print, you see Federal Reserve Bank of New York. 10,000, folks. In today's money, that would be roughly, equal how much? That's right, $1 million. You want to buy something worth $100 million? Okay. 100 of these pieces of paper, you could buy it for $100 million. Not too bad. You could do things with paper money. Okay? Because it was redeemable in gold. Real money. 1928 Federal Reserve notes start $5,000. Worth about $500,000 in today's money. You didn't have to use banks, right? People knew bank money is real gold or silver. There's a $100 bill, 1928. On the top left, notice, redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury or in gold or lawful money at any Federal Reserve Bank. The language there will change later on. You'll see. Pay attention. The language of being redeemable in lawful money or gold will be gone, okay, as time goes on. This is 1928 $500 Federal Reserve notes. Again, the same language on the top left. 1934 $1,000 Federal Reserve notes. Here is a $10,000. Okay. Again, you have money was around all those years. 1928 Federal Reserve note. By the way, you see, look at the seal on the left, the circle. The top part says Federal Reserve Bank. Bottom says New York City. See, that particular branch was responsible because the Federal Reserve banks were actually owned by member banks of that bank. The goal initially supposedly was that if one bank goes down, the other banks are behind them, so he doesn't go broke. And that was what was told to the American people. So rather than the banks issuing notes themselves, they would have their local cartel of Federal Reserve issue that note. That's how they started centralizing the banking system. Slowly and gradually, what we're going on with our everyday lives. Here it is. Look at this. 1934, $100,000 gold certificates. That would be about a $10 million piece of paper today. You want to buy something for $1 billion? No problem. Just 100 of these pieces of paper that represented the gold. Okay? So what happened? See, you see now at the bottom one, you're going to see the bottom one. Now, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. They took out any language that the older ones had that is redeemable in anything. Okay? How did that happen? Two-step process. The first step was the traitor communist Franklin Roosevelt, President of the United States, agent of the international banksters, issued this executive order, which is completely toothless, completely illegal. Why? Because in government, what branch of the government makes the laws? The legislature. The president heads up the executive. He executes the laws written by the legislature. He cannot make laws on his own, the president. Okay? The state same way. The legislature makes it, the governor executes them. So this executive order had absolutely zero legal authority. However, when it was issued in 1933, okay, people were scared that they may go to prison. They were threatened, okay, and that people have to turn a gold bullion and gold certificates in, so you cannot redeem it in gold. They say, during the Great Depression, that was a solution. Our grandparents were told of the Great Depression problem. Okay? So they suckered the American people to give up their gold. Here's the New York Times at the same time. Gold standard dropped for the president to lift prices and aid our trade position. Plans for controlled inflation drafted. All the typical propaganda lies of the New York Times, they were spewing it out way back then also. Okay? See, this was the real money. And that's all that was left. Silver was the only thing you could redeem your lawful money, your paper. Now, no more gold, only silver in 1933 afterwards. Okay? So this is a $100 Federal Reserve note. You see again, 1934 with the language on the top left, redeemable, okay, and lawful money. Okay, and then they changed that. Now, how big bills, cash bills disappear? There's not a whole lot of information about that, really. I just found online, they just quietly just did them. Okay, so they were used for purchasing ammunition for the war and large money transfers, such as real estate deals or moving bank to bank, of course. All large denomination bills printing ceased in 1946 after World War II. You got the Great Depression, the prosperity after the war. You know, people started trusting the banks again because in the early 30s with the bank runs, people didn't trust the banks. But now the trusted banking system was recreated, and they were officially recalled in 1969. In 1969, they stopped printing them, started issuing them, and they were out of circulation by 1980. I remember way back in 1978 and 79, I would pay my rent. For $550, I would go to the bank and get a $500 purple Federal Reserve note with a $50 bill, pay my rent in cash. If you watch old TV shows, like one of my favorite shows, how many you watch Mission Impossible? Anybody Mission Impossible fans here? Oh, a lot of them, okay. Mr. Phelps, right? You had to pay people off with a bunch of $1,000 bills. That was normal in the late 60s. Large bills were around, but they took them out, gradually out of circulation. The justification for recall was that it made it too easy for criminals and drug dealers to launder money. Yeah. And they claim the production of smaller bills is more cost-effective, rather because they can make less bills. They produce en masse small bills rather than less used larger bills, because most transactions financially are done with smaller amounts. That's the excuse they use. So, but guess what? Federal Reserve notes are legal tender by law. For payment of debts, you must accept them. Here it is from Title 31, Money and Finance, Federal Law, United States Code, okay? Section 5103. Here's what it says. United States coins and currency, including Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of Federal Reserve banks and national banks, are legal tender for all debts, public charges, taxes, and dues. Okay? If you owe somebody, you offer them, you tender, offer it, they reject it, you paid them. 1982, they did this. There was no silver backing, because what happened in 1963, after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, Vice President Johnson, who was obviously in on assassination and cover-up of his boss, we had a coup d'etat back then, literally in America, okay? He was an agent of the banksters, total criminal. One of the worst presidents we ever had was Johnson. He took us off the silver standard. You could get for a $1 bill silver, but not after Johnson came in. No more silver either. Just hang on to that piece of paper. That's what they did. Right? So, and then another thing they did is they start passing laws that over $10,000 cash you put in or out of bank, they report you to the government, because you may be a drug dealer. We're going to catch the drug dealers who want to make our children take drugs and die of drug overdose. That was the excuse. Okay? Here is Section 6050I of Title 26. Returns, this is Title 26. Returns relating to cash received in trade or business of $10,000. But you know what's funny about that? You saw it yesterday. That trade or business. Who does it apply to? Who is in the federal tax law involved in trade or business? Someone performing functions of federal public office. Government offices themselves or their employees. Doesn't apply to the banks or car dealers. Yeah. That's another topic we'll get to later on. Deception is throughout. Okay? Deception by definition. Okay? So they started that process of, here we go. And here's a regulation for that. Okay? Reports relating to currency in excess of $10,000 received in a trade or business. You want to buy a car and you give over $10,000 on cash, the car dealer thinks he has to report you to government. He doesn't. Because it's not in the trade or business. Here it is. They use the same definitions. This is 31 CFR. This is actually money and banking laws. But the definition, look at the bottom left highlighted. 26 U.S.C. 7701A1. Tax law definitions. Control. Where is the person? Trade or business. They import the tax law definition of federal public office. The car dealer is not supposed to report to the government when you buy a car for $10,000 cash. This is a form that they use. Report of cash payments over $10,000 received in a trade or business. Form 8300. You see, all this happened quietly. We're not aware of it. So now, you don't want to have a report to the government because IRS knows I must have some cash. They may want to come after you for more taxes. So I won't use cash, in or out. And they created a law called structuring. You take out $9,000 a day for 5 days, that's a crime. You structure your withdrawals or deposits under $10,000 so that they don't know about you. You must be a drug dealer. A felony. Felony! So people start getting away from cash. Meanwhile, on the other front, okay, a Diners Club was founded in 1949. There was a very first credit card was started by somebody. But what happened is American Express developed its plastic credit card in 1959, and MasterCard also came in 1966 in the game. Okay? Bank of America card was originally launched in 58, but then it was changed to Visa in 76 with the goal to reach international acceptance. That's where the transition to credit cards started. Okay? And a lot of people didn't have credit cards. That was back in what? 60s, 70s, 80s. But now, credit cards are becoming common. Most everybody has it. Number one, on that chart, Visa, you see the big bar, that's Visa. Number two, MasterCard. The other credit cards are out there. Okay? That's been used for money. And the thing is, all this credit card, okay, what's the key to it? The key to it, you have a bank account. What's the key of a key to bank account? The slave surveillance number, Satan surveillance number, misnamed Social Security number. We're going to get into that now because that's a key important topic. Here it is, the traitor, President Franklin Roosevelt. All this is propaganda, you know. Yeah, Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 million of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions. Wonderful thing, protection of children and the prevention of ill health. Who will be against that? Children having protection and nobody getting sick, right? That's how they sold it to us in 1935, okay? But guess what? He promised the American people that the slave surveillance number will never be used as a form of identification. What they accused the Germans in World War II? Germans never numbered their own people. He was doing it, Roosevelt, to Americans. planting the seeds. Here's Elvis Presley's Satan surveillance number card. Look at the bottom right. Not for identification. Yeah, I remember seeing back in the 1990s, old people would come to me. Say, Peymon, I got my card. On the back, it says not to be used for identification. In 30s and 40s and 50s, they would put that in the card. It was not to be your ID. It's not you. You are not a number. You're a child of God. And your name was given by your parents. Not by some earthly, satanic central source called the government. See? But they changed things. Isn't that funny how things change? Look at this one. This is Title 42, Section 666. Requirement of, highlight area, requirement of statutory prescribed procedures to improve effectiveness of child support enforcement. From Title 42 to Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 7, Social Security. For the children, right? Who's against protecting, providing for the children, right? 42 USC 666. We're going to go to A13. What an accident. A13. Let's read that. Recording of social security numbers in certain family matters. Procedures requiring that the social security number of any applicant for a professional license, driver's license, occupational license, recreational license, or marriage license be recorded on the application. So now, you want to get any licenses? They say, all right, what's your Satan surveillance number? Right? Without a number, we can't do it for you. Back in 1980, I was going to go to college. Okay? Was not American. Did have a number. And I said, you have a number. I don't have one. I'm not even American. In fact, I didn't have even a green card at the time. She said, oh, no problem. Go, they'll give you one anyhow. Me? Foreigner? Oh, yeah, they'll give you one. Sure enough, they gave me one. Okay? You think this is an accident? Some people criticize me, say, Peymon, you're not a Christian, because I'm not. I believe in God, but I'm not Christian. My wife is. Say, how could a non-Christian say there's a Satan surveillance number? And I tell them, I learned it from my Christian friends in the Patriot movement. They're the ones that showed me this stuff. You think, I didn't know what 666 was, or 13, but you think they put it by accident, the numbers are done that way? Do you have any doubts we're involved in a fight against a satanic system of deception, of lies, father of lies, satanic system? And God wants us to have love of the truth, seek the truth, and the truth shall. That's it, folks. That's what we're doing, okay? That's what we're doing, folks. You see? So along with you having to have a Satan surveillance number, you know, to open a bank account, the value of the dollar has been going down from 1913, $100, buys now, that's 2013. It's roughly close to 1%. Okay? $1 used to be worth about $100 in today's money. No? So what happened is that, again, another thing they did in 1962 at the bottom right, IRS began using SSN for federal tax reporting. Yes. That's where they got the mainframe computer. Okay? Which I'll talk about that later on today. They got them, and they want to number people with the computers. The computers made numbering essential. So they said, use that as your number. So then the bank started asking for your number back in 1970s and 80s. Okay? So let me ask you this now. They got things to a stage where without a Satan surveillance number, you could not open a bank account. Right? The banks refused to open it. I heard that they do an exception for illegal aliens. You know? Ain't that something? They can have it without a number, but you got to have a number. Get a credit or debit card without an SS number, no credit report, right? No credit card. And without the credit card or debit card, can you buy anything online from Amazon or Walmart or anyplace else? How about sell anything online on Amazon or eBay, anything place else? No. In short, you cannot buy or sell without the mark of the beast. That replaces your natural name, becomes your number that you cannot get rid of. And all of your financial transactions can be watched and known. End of your financial privacy. See, when I talk about a satanic system, it really is. And our next speaker, by the way, will expose a very other deep angle of a satanic system that's been around for a long time. So hang in there, folks. It's going to get more interesting. So, and what's going on now, gradually more and more businesses are refusing to do business in cash. It is less expensive and more convenient for them to pay 2 to 3% transaction fees to credit card companies rather than dealing with large volume of paper bills and safety concerns of transporting the cash to the bank for deposit to be able to pay the bills with a check or online transfer check, right? Now, if you have a debt, they must take it. But they say, we just won't do business with you. We don't do business with you. That's what they're doing now more. So what's the solution? You want to switch, folks? This is a solution-oriented rally, Restore Freedom Rally. Number one, do not get your children or grandchildren SSN. They started about 10 years ago at the hospital. Give a child and then an SS number. The hospital gets paid. Yes. Don't have children have home births at the hospital. We don't have a name for the child yet. Without a name, they cannot give it a number. Illegally behind your back, they do that. Use cryptocurrency, gold, and silver as much as possible to bypass the corrupt money system, right? Now, those are easy to do, okay? Contribute to lawsuits that challenge the use of SSN for opening bank account and credit card. Yes, those lawsuits need to be done. And through lawsuits, force the U.S. government to issue paper money in large denominations. But guess what? Who has ever funded those lawsuits? Nobody. Does that need to happen? Yeah. That's what the Restore Freedom Plan of Freedom also is all about. Not paying our enemies through its really Satan IRS. And free up that funds for you and your family first. And then contribute part of that to these kind of lawsuits that need to happen. I know how to do a lawsuit. I know the laws. But guess what I don't have? That Amazon has. That Bill Gates has. The money to pay the lawyers. Where's the money going to come from? Not paying our enemies. It's that simple. They deceived us. So I'll talk about it later today and Monday. How to free our mind, like in Matrix. See the movie Matrix? Free your mind. Okay, so I'll come back and talk about that. So about how we can actually do something, restore your financial privacy, restore our freedoms. So with that, hang it, stretch a little bit for a minute because our next speaker, she's fabulous. I know it's been a long time listening, so please just move around, get a stretch, get yourself going, because you're going to love what the next speaker has to say. Thank you.
All right, let's give it up. Let's give it up for Peymon Mottahedeh. Yeah.